Yeah, four out of seven. Is that we're good? Open the December 20th, 2023 Architectural Review Committee meeting, and present we have myself, Patrick Tregenza, Justin Polly, Vice Chair, Shelley Schmidt, and Eric Palmer. You're over here now. Okay, good. So we're all alphabetical. And then Spencer, if you want to let it, Pam just walked in. Okay, so let's just hold a second. Come on, Pam. If you want to go ahead, Spencer, and announce the staff present.
Staff present today is Levi Hill, Planning Manager, Senior Associate Planner Christy Sabdo, and Recording Secretary Spencer Argenbright.
Present. Thank you. And if you can also explain how members of the public can participate via Zoom.
Information on participating in this meeting and providing public comment, including remotely by Zoom or telephone, is on the meeting's agenda, which is online at isearchmonterey.org. Remote commenters will be muted until it is their turn to speak, and a timer will be shown on the screen. If you are connected on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. In the chamber, we recommend keeping phones and devices muted to prevent audio interference with the meeting. Thank you for participating in your city government. Today's ARC webinar ID is 161-914-9563.
Thank you. We'll move on to the consent agenda. We have the December 6th meeting minutes. And I also noticed it says here December 6th field trip minutes, but I didn't really see field trip minutes. Can you address that, Levi?
Correct. So it's we are required by Brown Act to have minutes for the field trip as well, because it is considered a public meeting. So it's the 1-page minutes document that follows the actual meeting minutes.
Okay.
I didn't see it. Yeah, it's very brief. It covers basically who was in attendance, what type of questions were asked, and that's pretty much it.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to welcome a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda, including the December 6th meeting minutes and the December 6th field trip minutes.
Second that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
Abstain from just the
Abstain.
field trip.
Right, okay.
But
That's fine.
otherwise I
Yeah,
was
you were
okay.
there for the meeting. Great. We're going to move on. We're going to open up the floor and Zoom to any public comments that are not on the agenda today. Anybody in the audience? Anybody
I
online?
see no hands raised online.
Great. We're going to close that public comment. We're going to move on to the first public appearance. Consider 2330 Del Monte Avenue, ARP 23-0017 for construction of a new U-Haul U-Box warehouse and exterior alterations to the site. And it looks like we have Christy up ready to give us a presentation.
Thank you. 1 second. All right. Good evening, Chair Tregenza and commissioners. My name is Christy Sabdo, Senior Associate Planner with the City of Monterey. I'll be presenting 2330 Del Monte Avenue Architectural Review Permit Application and Tree Removal Application for the construction of a new U-Haul U-Box warehouse facility. Staff is recommending that the Architectural Review Committee adopt a resolution approving the Architectural Review Permit application and the tree removal permit application. Now, the project site is located in the commercial land use designation area. The zoning is C3D2 ES. The D2 is a design overlay district, and it's in the Via Del Monte neighborhood. The site itself is located along Del Monte Avenue. Also, it's in between, it's in between Del Monte Avenue and Highway 1. And then on either side is Hannon Avenue, which leads to the Highway 1 on-ramp here shown. And then on the other side is Ramona Avenue. The project site is also located in the East Del Monte Area Plan, Zones 4 and 5. The purpose of the East Del Monte Area Plan is to implement general plan policies by the preparation of design and landscape standards, which upgrade the appearance of the area, and by providing parking standards, which will reduce the impacts of on-street parking. So the D2 overlay district requires Planning Commission and Architectural Review Committee approval of all new construction and exterior alterations and additions. Conditions of approval may impose requirements that are more restrictive than those prescribed by the applicable base district regulations. If the Planning Commission finds these requirements are necessary to have a harmonious relationship with existing and planned uses in the vicinity and with sensitive environmental resources. The Planning Commission did approve the use permit, architectural review permit, subject to the D2 overlay and the tree removal permit on December 12th, 2023, with no additional conditions. And now it's before you. The Planning Commission also approved a mitigated negative declaration for the project on December 12th. Applicant Catherine Avila with Avila Construction applied for an architectural review permit and tree permit for the demolition of an existing 6,250 square foot existing warehouse building and the construction of a new 20,708 square foot warehouse building to accommodate U-Haul U-Boxes and other site improvements at 2330 Del Monte Avenue. Here are the existing site conditions, just to walk you through them. It helps make sense of the project. So here are the existing conditions along Del Monte Avenue. You'll see a landscape buffer along Del Monte Avenue, some signage. And then you're along Hannon Avenue here, which leads to the Highway 1 on-ramp. As it exists now, they have the rental vehicles up along Del Monte Avenue and Hannon. And then you'll see some landscaping along Hannon too. On the other side, Ramona, you'll see that they store their vehicles. You could see it more from the Ramona side and their trash enclosure. And then going back to the Hannon side where it leads to the Highway 1 on-ramp, you'll see that they have this fencing, which is kind of open. And you can see the vehicles as you drive onto the highway. And here's some of the existing trees that screen the property currently along Highway 1. So here we have the proposed project. The new warehouse would be used as a distribution and storage point for U-Boxes. U-Boxes are large containers that are delivered to homes and businesses to be filled with personal items that are either stored or shipped by U-Haul. The new U-Box storage building would not be open to the public and is for storage and distribution of U-Boxes only. U-Box users would not have direct access on site to access their boxes. The existing truck rental and retail operation would continue, with customers continuing to visit to rent U-Haul trucks. Looking at the site plan here, you can see there's enhanced landscaping along Del Monte Avenue. They've expanded the landscaping. They've removed the rental vehicles from being seen along Del Monte Avenue. And they have their visitor parking here that's screened by both landscaping along Del Monte and Hannon Avenue. And then their existing offices here in dark orange. The demolition of the existing warehouse building is in this dashed line here. And then the new warehouse building would be larger. You can see that highlighted. The display of outdoor vehicles was approved with that use permit. It's located in this area. And there would be an enhanced landscaping along Highway 1. And you can see here, this is a bioretention basin. There's fire access on the other side of that bioretention basin and a new access. It's kind of the access to Hannon Avenue was relocated, and it's in between this bioretention basin and landscape area. Other site improvements include the stormwater improvements, such as the bioretention basin removal and a replacement of 80,000 square feet of existing pavement to meet current stormwater control standards, repaving and new striping of parking spaces, additional fence screening along Highway 1. It would be a black metal. Various samples were provided. Relocation of outdoor storage of U-Haul vehicles for rent, installation of electronic vehicle parking spaces, and relocation of outdoor storage. So the proposed landscaping also includes removal of trees. So 8 palm trees would be removed and 5 red gum trees, which is a type of eucalyptus, both non-native, would be removed through this permit. The palm trees, the mitigation ratio would be 1-to-1, and the red gum flowering trees would be 3-to-1 in coordination with the city forester. So that's a total of 23 trees that would need to be replaced on site. So in terms of the trees that would be replaced, they would be replaced along the Del Monte Avenue and Hannon Avenue landscape areas. And then 14 trees would be, new trees would be located along Highway 1, and these would be Monterey cypress or pine trees. And then also some native and non-native shrubs. You can see in this picture here, this is the view of the proposed building from Highway 1, so you could still see it with the existing and proposed landscaping, but it's very minimal. There is proposed lighting on site. Wall sconces on the new warehouse building would be on every side except for the side that faces Del Monte Avenue. There's no accessibility on that side, so wall sconces won't be required. So really, they only have lighting proposed on that building in terms of what's required through the building code and no more. There will be pole lighting as well. The pole lights are located on the perimeter of the visitor parking and outdoor display areas for security. And both the sconce and the pole lighting would be downlit. So the lighting would be directed downwards. So here are the elevations. And I will share with you kind of some of the materials that will be used. The new warehouse building will be finished with vertical insulated metal panels, stucco embossed in the color warm white. These panels would be accented with the 6-inch metal fins in blue and green colors that you can see here. At the end of each building would be wood look accents in the color walnut to provide interest and warmth to the building. There will be parapet caps. So there's a brown parapet cap over above the warm white, and then blue above the wood accents. And you can see the existing U-Haul building here. So then the new warehouse is designed to complement the existing warehouse building. So this is the elevation facing Hannon Avenue. This is facing Del Monte Avenue and the neighboring property. This faces Ramona Avenue. And then this is facing Highway 1. And here are the materials and colors. So the project required consistency with the airport land use plan. And so on November 13th, staff took the project to the Airport Land Use Commission, and they did find the project consistent with the airport land use compatibility plan. And it was subject to one condition of approval regarding exterior lighting. So they just want all lighting on site to be unobtrusive, downlit, harmonious with the local area. And this is something that they really already meet, but we'll double check that at the building permit stage. So I'm going to go through the architectural review findings. Finding 1 is the proposed project siting form, mass, and architectural style are appropriate for the site, the immediate area, and the city. In terms of siting, the proposed new warehouse building would be sited in the same location as the existing warehouse. And this, the siting is in the best location for the warehouse as it minimizes visibility from Highway 1. And I want to give credit to the applicant because originally they proposed the project much closer to Highway 1. And staff asked for the building to be pushed back so there was less visibility from the highway, and they did bring that back. And we really appreciate that. It's made it a much better project. Massing. The proposed massing of the new warehouse building would be larger. However, the size of the warehouse is appropriate for the size of the project site and compatible with other commercial buildings in the area along Del Monte Avenue. In terms of architectural style, as I just laid out all the different materials, it would be compatible with the other commercial buildings in the area. Proposed project will not unreasonably impair the views, privacy, or living environment currently enjoyed by other properties in the vicinity. Staff didn't identify any privacy or view impacts. The proposed maximum height of the building is 32 feet, approximately 29-foot ridge height with a 3-foot parapet height. Is compatible with that of the surrounding commercial buildings and would be partially visible from Del Monte Avenue, Hannon Avenue, Ramona Avenue, and Highway 1. Due to safety concerns, story poles didn't need to be installed. It was approved by the building official. Instead, 3 4x8 banners depicting the proposed building were installed along Del Monte Avenue, Hannon, and Ramona. Staff hasn't received any public comments regarding privacy or views. We only received one public comment on trees. The proposed project is substantially consistent with the Monterey General Plan, as well as all applicable and adopted area plans. The proposed use is consistent with the commercial land use designation, as the use would continue as a commercial operation. Del Monte Avenue is a designated scenic entrance. So the applicable policies are General Plan Policy H10 requires developments visible from scenic entrances to blend into the natural surroundings. General Plan Policy F6 requires screening of commercial areas along Del Monte Avenue, and General Plan Policy G2 states that landscaping shall favor native species. So all of these policies are complied with the extensive landscaping that they have proposed. And the majority of their landscaping trees and shrubs are native. And I've gone over this, but and these are the trees that they would remove, and then you'll see the new trees in the landscape plan as well. And the city's general plan identifies special places which are considered to have significant visual resources. General Plan Policy H9 states that landscape buffers should be provided at least 100 feet in width from the ultimate plan right-of-way of state designated highways. In this location along Highway 1, the site is not an officially designated or the highway is not an officially designated state scenic highway, but rather an eligible state scenic highway. Therefore, this policy does not apply to the project. All properties adjacent to the site are commercial. Residential properties are located across from Highway 1, at least 260 feet from the project site, within the neighborhoods of Del Monte, Grove, and Laguna Grande. The proposed project would not be detrimental to the public health, safety, or welfare of persons residing or working in or adjacent to the neighborhood. The proposed storage and delivery of U-Haul U-Boxes from the new warehouse building, as I said, would not be detrimental. And because the public would not be permitted to access U-Boxes on site, the only active activity associated with the proposed use would be the delivery of U-Haul U-Boxes on and off site. The project is consistent with the East Del Monte area plan. There are 2 overall policies, 1 and 2, that apply to the site, and then some more specific area plan policies, which I'll go over. So policy 1, which is an overall policy of the plan, upgrade the appearance of commercial properties fronting on Del Monte Avenue. The project includes new enhanced landscaping along Del Monte Avenue, and the display of rental vehicles will no longer be located in the visitor parking area along Del Monte. Policy 2, provide on-street or on-site parking so that parking is not forced onto the streets. There is, in the Monterey City Code, there are off-street parking requirements that require 23 parking spaces when you take into account the existing uses to remain in the new warehouse building plus the outdoor storage, which would require 23 off-street parking spaces. However, the East Del Monte area plan has its own off-street parking requirements, which are more stringent, which would require 54 parking spaces overall instead of 23. So the current site plan shows 23 parking spaces. But once staff had learned that the East Del Monte area plan has off-street parking requirements as well that are more stringent, we have added a special condition of approval to have the applicant add 31 more spaces back on the site plan. So we can check that at the building permit stage. It's just a matter of striping. So the project originally, in the beginning, had 75 parking spaces, and included which included the rental vehicles, but they don't need to be striped. So those were removed. Parking was reduced to 23. With that condition of approval, they just need to add the 31 back on so it'll be 54 total parking spaces. And again, it's just a matter of striping. So we've added a special condition of approval here. East Del Monte area plan, the project is within area 4 and 5. So I'm going to go over area 4 now. The project would be consistent with area 4 design standards, which requires landscaping within the 15-foot front setback required along Del Monte Avenue. The site layout exceeds that 15-foot setback requirement for landscaping. Along the Del Monte Avenue frontage, the deep parking stalls have been eliminated and enhanced landscaping is proposed to screen the commercial area consistent with the standard. Plant selections include a mix of existing plant species and new plant species recommended, and they're consistent with the East Del Monte area landscape guidelines. The East Del Monte area plan area 5 standards states the maximum allowable height in this area is 30 feet. So the proposed new warehouse building would be 32 feet in height from natural grade at the lowest grade, approximately 29-foot ridge height with a 3-foot parapet height. However, the Monterey City Code allows an exception to building heights. Specifically, parapet walls are allowed not more than 4 feet above the limiting height of the building. So this parapet exception brings the proposed height of the building warehouse to a maximum of 29 feet with the 3-foot parapet. So it's under the 30-foot requirement for area 5. The property shall include a visual upgrade of the site and building and shall conform with the East Del Monte area plan parking standards. The site, again, is being visually enhanced by demolishing an existing older storage building with a new warehouse building with a modern design, enhanced landscaping along Del Monte Avenue, additional landscape and fence screening along Highway 1, and stormwater improvements. The plan requires more stringent parking standards. Total of 54 parking spaces are required. And again, a special condition of approval 1 has been added, requiring additional 31 parking spaces. Finding 4, the proposed finish, colors, materials, landscape, lighting, and fencing, and other exterior features are appropriate for the project site area and the city. The existing office building would remain, and the new warehouse building would be designed to complement and modernize the existing design. The project includes the removal of 13 trees total, 8 palm trees with a 1-to-1 mitigation ratio, and the 5 red flowering gum trees will require a 3-to-1 mitigation ratio for a total of 23 replacement trees. We have added a special condition of approval requiring that those trees are for sure on the landscape plan, and also an additional condition of approval, making sure that planning goes to the site to make sure that those 23 blades have actually been planted on site. Exterior lighting consists of wall sconce lighting on the exterior of the new warehouse, only enough lighting to achieve the minimum required for a building code. They'd be fully shielded, downlit, and dark sky compliant. The exterior site lighting would consist of pole-mounted lights replaced to match existing pole-mounted lights. The pole-mounted lights are located on the perimeter of the visitor parking and outdoor display areas for security, and they would continue to be downlit to direct light downwards and on the site. So overall, the project is consistent with this finding. And then there are tree removal permit findings. So the finding is, in situations where healthy trees prevent reasonable development of permitted uses, the trees may be approved for removal. Existing development on similar sites in the same zone and having similar topographic and vegetation characteristics shall be considered when determining reasonable development of permitted uses. The removal of trees is needed as it would prevent reasonable development of the permitted uses. Consistent with the tree preservation ordinance, mitigation is required for a total of 23 trees. And staff is recommending approval of the Architectural Review Committee staff is recommending the Architecture Review Committee adopt a resolution approving the architectural review permit application, the tree removal permit application. And I do want to mention, we did get one public comment on the removal of trees. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. It sounds like you are with the head nods, and staff's available for questions, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Abdo from the committee?
I just had a question. Were story poles assembled?
No, they were not assembled due to safety concerns because the proposed building is so large. That requirement was waived by the building official, but instead they installed 4 foot by 8 foot notices, with the elevations on them at each of the frontages. So Del Monte, Hannon, and Ramona.
Okay, so that, yeah, typically it's required, but I guess there's a waiver.
There's a
in place
waiver
for-
for
okay.
safety.
Okay.
Cases of safety. Yeah.
And just a clarification on you said it's just a matter of striping. It's the same amount of pavement. They're just adding striping to the paving that's there.
Yeah, they're removing
Sweet.
pavement, adding more
Okay.
pavement. So I don't know if it's the exact amount of pavement, but it's essentially about the same. And
But
then,
then removing some of the landscaping area to add those parking spaces in.
I think overall they're adding more landscaping. We can ask the applicant more on the detail.
The change that you said you're asking to put back in 30 spaces.
Yeah, it's in an area where there was previously pavement. And so it's just a matter of striping in that area.
That area of the site was previously identified to be paved for storage
Yep.
and now will be paved for parking.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one question, and it may be a question for the arborist. I'm a little confused on why, if the gum trees and the palm trees are both non-indigenous trees, why one has a 1-to-1 replacement ratio and the other has a 3-to-1 replacement ratio, particularly on a site with such limited landscape area.
Mhm.
Why are we asking them to put in 23 trees?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Thought it might require the arborist,
I
but
can-
do you know? Yeah.
Not now, but like maybe when we deliberate. since-
Okay.
yeah, since
But yeah, we do take that recommendation from the city arborist. The committee does have the ability to change the replacement requirement. That's just staff's recommendation, always pulls from the city's arborist.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a question just because I'm new. 54 parking spaces seems excessive, and I heard that it does not include rental vehicles, like the parking spaces for the rental vehicles.
Yeah, the rental vehicles don't require parking spaces.
So
They-
54 spaces are required for customers and staff.
Yes,
Wow.
and it's an old plan. And so maybe at some point we need to revisit that plan.
And is that parking formula established by like the planning commission or the council or ARC?
So that formula, as Christy mentioned, comes from the East Del Monte area plan. It's just a parking ratio that was established, and Christy, you may know the date of that plan, but
I was
it's
going to look that up right
it's
before. but
quite
it's old.
quite dated. This topic came up at planning commission as well. It's definitely worth visiting if not making amendments to that plan. Perhaps eliminating the plan in general might even be more appropriate. But yes, it is a large parking requirement for such a use.
Yeah, and I'm sorry if you said, is that a planning commission decision to change that formula?
It would ultimately, so staff would have to bring an amendment request to the planning commission or repeal the plan, which would ultimately go to, yes, the planning commission.
Thanks.
So on the tail end of that, Christy, when it went before the planning commission, because if I'm understanding correctly, there will be minimal customers or clients there at any one time because they're just going in to either arrange a box delivery or I think there's some vehicles for rent there too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, 54 seems pretty excessive when you're not having people really coming in and out and that the office doesn't look like it would hold 54 people.
Yes.
And maybe it's a question better asked of the applicant, but I was just kind of curious how many employees might be there at one time. And then 2, did the planning commission have any feedback or comments regarding that number of parking? It just
Yes.
seems like a lot of
They
parking
thought it was excessive as well.
that may not be necessary for the use, and it just kind of invites, people maybe, I don't know if it's gated, but, people maybe parking their vehicles there and walking away, or, when they see all these parking stalls
Mhm.
delineated. So, yeah,
Do-
I do feel it's excessive for the proposed use.
Like the trees, do we have the power to reduce the required amount of parking?
So parking would requires a variance or a parking adjustment from the planning
So-
commission. So,
It's a moot point.
and it's my understanding the applicant's not opposed to providing that amount of parking.
Just one more question. Did you get all yours answered? Okay. I always get confused when a project goes to the planning commission and comes back to the ARC. It seems backward. Why was it done in that order?
Sure, it's because of the D2 overlay district that requires planning commission and architectural review committee approval. So it requires the planning commission first and then comes back to the architectural review committee. And they didn't have any additional design considerations or additional conditions to add to the project regarding that overlay district.
And I'll just note, it's, as far as the use permit goes, it's fairly common for planning commission to consider a use permit prior to it coming to the ARC for the design.
So they weren't looking at the building per se, just.
So on this one is
what it
interesting,
was
as
being used
as Christie
for.
noted, they actually were designs typically not in the purview of the planning commission. This in the D2 overlay, it's pretty clear in the code that both the planning commission and the ARC are tasked with approving the architectural review permit. So this is kind of the exception to that. But as Christie noted, they did not provide any feedback or comment or modification to the design.
Thank you. Any other questions for Christie? Would the applicant like to make a presentation?
Good afternoon, Chair, staff, and Commissioners. Paul Davis. What can I say about a big white box? We did, as you heard, we tried citing it in a variety of ways. And I think it really is best where it is at. So we don't have that mass closer to the freeway, and the replacement trees that will be more successful in protecting that view the farther away, the farther it was pushed back. Also, it's convenient operationally. So what we do, we had kind of a menu of pieces to play with, and so we just tried not to call attention to this building, because if you're driving at 65 miles an hour or more, you don't want to be distracted. So we just try to pick a color that would disappear, but also have some elements of fun and just something different. And so that's how we came with the design that you see there. All of the existing landscaping is being replaced along the Del Monte area, right? So that will be all new. And then we'll use a lot of those replacement trees along the fence line of Hannon and the highway to be able to get that screening in a couple of years or many years. The existing rail fence, or the existing metal fence, is a picket fence, and we're proposing a punched panel, steel panel, to be attached onto that to not have that wide open view as you're on Hannon coming around and entering the freeway. So we'll make that a little bit more of a barrier, a visual barrier. And I don't know what else to say.
Any questions for Mr. Davis?
What are the little fins for on the side of the building? Is that like a U-Haul? Sometimes corporations have
Yeah.
architectural marketing that they do.
Yeah. That's what it is.
It came from
We
you.
looked at the colors. Luckily, we didn't put the big U-Haul sign that's right on the building that some of the designs that were shown to us. So yeah, we like I said, we had this kind of toolbox of things, and
That reminds me of a question I meant to ask Christie. What we don't see any signage at all. Is there no proposed signage? Or is that coming at a later date?
A sign permit would be required. Originally, they did require or have signage on the building and it was removed.
Okay.
But so, yes,
So are there plans to,
I don't know. There's an existing sign right on Del Monte right now.
Mhm.
Are we
okay,
keeping that?
so no. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
That's it, yeah.
And
And the north side of the building doesn't have that type of interest because there's about a 20-foot building right in front of it. So that's where we didn't take the blades around all three sides.
And just to follow up on that, so there were other options considered, but they were basically kit parts from the client. And then-
Largely, yes. Yeah.
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 Okay.
It's just in starting to arrange something. Yeah.
Any other questions?
And regarding the parking, sure, I could see being a former planning commissioner, probably when that was done, especially in this area where there was no parking on the streets for anybody to work or anything like that. But since this big building has one person in it, there should be something in the ordinance that said if it's an office use, yes. If it's a storage use, maybe that figure of how to get to those just right. I don't know. It's just one size fits all.
No. Any other questions?
Thanks. How long have you guys been in the review process, Paul, with the city for this?
Earlier this year. Yeah.
A year.
We provided renderings from Highway 1 and just to illustrate, where we were going each time.
I had to go through the initial study process as well.
Great, thanks. Catherine, did you want to say anything?
Thank you. I'm Catherine Avila with Avila Construction. Happy to be here. Happy to answer any questions that you all have, but I think Paul covered some good ground. I'd like to point out we also have the U-Haul client here with us. So if you have any operational questions, things of that nature, they're happy to answer. So we have the South Bay Regional Manager as well as the local manager of this Monterey store here. So open to any and all questions, but very excited to be at this point today. It's been like we said, about a year, and Christie's been great to work through this process with. So we're at a good spot. Excited to move forward. Thank you.
So I didn't get your names, but the U-Haul guys, would you like to make it yeah.
I would just say, thank you for hearing us out and allowing us to be here, get to this point. The one thing that actually bugs me a little bit is that I'm actually an almond farmer. I own orchards. I'm a farmer. So the trees that we're removing, we're actually going to repurpose them.
Oh, cool.
And put them in somewhere. It's not like we just want to chop down some trees. So that was my main thing there, but thank you for hearing us out and appreciate your time.
Any questions? Just really quickly, what's the process of one of these drop boxes? It comes on a flatbed truck?
Yes, correct. It
And
comes
get,
on,
like-
it comes on a truck and then we offload it with a forklift.
Okay. And there's just a couple guys on site that are there to do that?
One guy primarily, and then when they will overlap in schedules, there'll be two from like a 11 to 1 PM standpoint, and then the next guy will be off.
And then
and
the rental place still has the same amount of employees that it
The
has
rental
now?
place, correct,
Okay.
correct.
And you're not expanding the fleet or anything like that as
No,
far as trucks?
negative.
That's all
We're
gonna stay
actually
the same?
decreasing the fleet.
decreasing.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And when someone wants to check the contents of their box, they have to have it delivered to their house in order
Correct.
to, they can't come and just pop open the
No,
box.
no. We have certain business plans for certain locations. Some locations you can do that. At this location, we don't have the space to do that. And so in any case, we will offer a customer a free delivery to their home if they really need to access their house, their items at the site. So we will
How
offer
many
a free
times a
delivery
week?
to their home.
Yeah.
What's that?
Once a- Christmas time.
Bring it over. Free every week, okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, no
did
problem.
similar to that, actually, did, and it's to anyone here who has the potential to answer it. Did you do a study that showed the amount of parking you would have preferred?
Yes, it was less than 54. We were right around 23-ish places or so.
And you had that at one point.
Mhm.
Uh-huh. Did- For the use. Well, I was wondering if you did one, if in your ideal world, if you weren't doing these parking
Formulas.
standards and things like that, would it be 4 parking spots? What would be needed for this site, in
For
your
this-
opinion?
About 23-ish, 20.
So you would want around
yeah.
20.
Most of our vehicles don't get parked. They're not parked, they're staged and they're re-rented. So we have a term called shunting, which we take vehicles,
Yep.
we slot them somewhere, and then right after that, they're picked up. So it's not really, we don't like to consider them actual parking spots.
Okay, thank you.
But you can use, I mean, no one's gonna say you can't use one of these 54 spots to let one of your trucks hang out in, right?
It may sit there for a couple
Yeah.
hours.
Well, just like,
No,
you
no,
should
I'll
be able to
honest.
use. you
It
should
may
be able
sit
to
there for a
use
little bit
that
longer.
space.
It may sit
Yeah.
there for a little bit longer, but
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, the only reason bringing it up is actually more for your benefit in arguing later to make these changes. It's good to have documentation for that. and
Absolutely.
just having been in cities where that changes have occurred,
Absolutely,
that would be helpful to this commission.
absolutely.
Just out of curiosity, how many vehicles at one time is there on the average?
Well, I was just at the site earlier. We had about,
Currently, box trucks is maybe like 10, 12 at most.
I was just at the site earlier today before we came over here, and there's about 5 vans parked in the front Del Monte area, which, we're gonna be removing from there. But actual trucks with the box on it, it's about 10 or so, if that.
And they would be using one of the proposed parking spots, correct?
Correct,
Okay,
correct.
thank you.
Any other questions? Great, thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to open it up for public comment. I don't see anybody in the audience. Do we have anybody online, Spencer?
I see no hands raised online.
Thank you. Just ask the committee if you were all able to read the letter by Nina Beatty today. Good, all right. Then we're going to close public comments and we're going to open up to committee comments. I went by today and I have to say those palm trees are not thriving. So hopefully they'll do better in the Central Valley where they belong. Yeah, yeah.
We went through the local arborist and he approved the trees and we put them in. They have not flourished. We've had several different landscapers come out. And I've been told that these are the wrong trees. We need, I don't know, but we need Mexican palm trees.
Okay.
Yeah.
About how long have they been there?
Can you come up so we can hear you speak? It's okay. Yeah.
I want to say roughly about 2018.
Okay,
Okay.
so just a few years.
Yeah,
And then
Thank you.
I was just noticing that the acacia trees or the eucalyptus trees they're right next to where the proposed building is? Are they where the building is going to be? It's like it's right outside that footprint, maybe?
Oh, okay.
So Patrick, to answer your question, Christie's going to pull up an exhibit.
Yeah.
I anticipated you might have this question.
It just
So-
looks like they're right on the edge. of
They're
that-
right on the very edge,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
hopefully you all can see this all right. So I did an overlay of the new versus the existing site plan. And it was a little hard to see the planter boxes where those trees are. So I highlighted them in yellow. That's where those planter
I-
boxes are.
Oh, so
They're right up against the new building.
Yeah.
And the ADA path of travel runs squarely through the middle of those,
Where those trees
trees.
yeah. And I don't know what you feel about those trees, Payam. They're not native. I mean, they look like they were pretty healthy trees, but they're going to replace them with Monterey cypress and some sort of pinus. You good with that?
Aren't we all? No. I'm kidding.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, just, I guess the general comment on this, a big, large white box is, I'm switching to overall.
Yeah. Comments.
But, it's very modern looking also, which I wouldn't say would be generally kind of a Monterey preferred sort of look. But being where it is, et cetera, everything all of you said is correct. I think sighting is probably about as good as you could get for visibility and things like that. I did wonder about the story poles just because I got out of Street View because I forgot about it when I drove by earlier, just what some of these other houses that are up on the hill would probably see this, and you can actually see from Street View, even from up there, they're going to see this come up. There is already some warehousey things down there at the existing building, et cetera. So I doubt anyone's going to notice it too much. So that sort of alleviated my slight concerns about that. And generally speaking, as all of you've noted, you're on the road moving pretty quickly. You're maybe coming from Seaside, which it's just lots of boxes like this. So hopefully it's not as imposing, and there's buildings in front of it as well. Everything you said. The trees are, palms, they're not really appropriate here. As you said, they're not thriving. They don't hold a lot of ecological value. That's partially why they don't do a whole lot of scrubbing of the air.
They don't screen either.
Carbon,
Yeah.
they're not screening much. They're
Yeah.
not great for wildlife. So palms are less valuable in that regard. The gum trees they're nice. You see them around, they thrive here. Actually, they're pretty beautiful, probably provide good more carbon sequestration, as well as just the flowers and stuff. You get lots of hummingbirds and things will enjoy those, and butterflies and all that. So they have more value. Generally, I think we have in our plans, like 3-to-1 is kind of standard. I think that's fairly standard actually for even harsher restrictions in a lot of cities, be it a dollar value per caliper and things like that. But as everybody said, the replacement's good. Replacing with a lot of natives, that's great. It's all improving the screening actually from what it is today. So generally speaking, I think we're adding value ecologically and aesthetically to the site through the landscape. So I don't really have significant issues, apart from I had been a little worried about a big box, and if that style is really like totally appropriate. But it kind of is what it is. It's probably a bit of an improvement to what's there. And then agree with everybody's concerns about the parking, but there's nothing really we can do about that except support changes when they come.
So I approve of this mitigation schedule. But was I hearing from you that you think that's a little excessive?
No,
or-
it just, to me, it was confusing I think your explanation of that the gum trees provide more value, as an architect, whenever we see eucalyptus close to a building, we do everything we can to get rid of it. It's like a matchbox.
Most of these want them gone.
Yeah,
These are
yeah.
little.
I was a little confused when you look at like this small planter strip, and it's like, put 23 trees in there, and it's really like, why are we making them do that? I always get a little confused on the ratios of replacement, but if the applicant hasn't expressed concern about putting them in that planter strip, then it's going to be screening from the highway. I don't mind the industrial building. I think that in that section of Monterey, there's a lot of them. I'm not crazy about when you try to dress up an industrial building and make it look like something else. And that's why I asked about those fins and that big wood parapet and things like that. It's just like, let the building be what the building is, you know, it's a big metal box, but I realize that a lot of that is branding. We see that on Stall Motors. You know, Mercedes came in and put their giant metal columns on there. So, you know, corporate America is going to do what corporate America is going to do. And yeah, I think it's just an industrial building in an industrial part of town. So I don't have a problem with it. I think it's important. I'm glad that we're bringing up some of these replacement ratios and parking issues. And that's why I always like to ask about the length of the planning process, because I don't feel like it should take a year to get a project like this, through the planning process. So I think it's important just to keep track of that stuff and make sure that the city's always doing whatever we can. Paul, I know you've been on these commissions for years, to move these things along. So, yeah, I'm fine with the project.
Yeah, I was thinking about what you said about the style, but you know, I mean, the Mogo building and the Starbucks, and that's all very kind of keeping in this new kind of modern look with some softening wood features, and you know, I don't mind it. And people don't really see that. I mean, it's so tucked out of the way.
Yeah.
And it's going to be screened. So, any other comments? Any comments? I'd like to entertain a motion to approve.
I do want to
Go ahead.
just briefly to the tree aspect, because I do really appreciate concern from citizens and things about that. And it's something I do like to consider and be careful about and thoughtful with. But it does seem like it's actually an improvement in the future. And so that is something we definitely want to look for in those conditions. It's just, of course, whenever you get large trees or ones that have a lot of value, and ecosystems are things that are more of a concern in that regard. So I think they've done a good job here,
Absolutely.
the department and the applicant as well. So
Okay, so I'll go ahead and move to approve 2330 Del Monte Avenue. We got a lot here. ARP 23-0017 and ART 23-0106.
I'll second.
Any other comments before we vote? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we're going to move on to item 5, planning office update. Levi.
Yeah. So we'll just quickly, as mentioned in the report, with the update, there was an extension to the suspension of the Mills Act program approved by City Council at the December 5th meeting. Again, this is a temporary moratorium on Mills Act contracts to allow the city to complete a fiscal impact analysis to kind of assess the effectiveness of the program and what the results really have been, since it is a little bit of a dated program. As well, also noted, the Planning Commission met on December 12th, approved a project at 1047 Cass Street. So that'll be coming before this committee at the probably the next meeting in January, and also approved the project that you just considered this evening. And then also want to note that as you probably saw, there's the January 3rd meeting will be canceled due to the holidays and when packets would be posted during that holiday closure. So the next ARC meeting will be January 17th, 2024.
Thank you, Levi. Is there a timetable on looking at the sign guidelines for?
So we'll be developing our work program for 2024. So it'll kind of include everything, and I'll have a better idea of what the time frame is on that, and things of also like if we're going to make amendments to the East Del Monte plan, or if we're going to be proposing to repeal that plan. So I'll have a better idea in early 2024.
Great. Thanks, Levi. Everybody have a happy holiday.
Yeah.
And the meeting is now adjourned.